There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can absolutely light up your funnels. Let's go. This is the Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic. Join me as I uncover the secrets of the world's most elite CMOs and marketing leaders. The Revenue Driven CMO is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI driven performance agency that makes you smarter. So I'm really excited to be speaking with you today. I want to have all types of conversations, but you know how we like to start with one of your biggest secrets.
I think that is such a big issue. Brands are not using their first party data in any type of meaningful way. Whether they're just kind of sitting on this huge mountain of it, just being basically treating it like a CRM, like, great, we've got all this data, all these fields with, we know exactly when someone came to us and why, and did they call us and what did they have complaints, what was their issue. And so I think that it's a huge miss that we're maybe in this industry as a whole using first party data either just to have or just for that reporting, that attribution after the marketing is done, what happened. Then we're looking at our first party data. But I think we
Right.
need to bring it to the forefront of everything we're doing.
Why do you think that's the case? Like, because brands are generally smart. I know they can be slow or silly at times, but like,
Yeah.
why is it the case that nobody's using that first party data?
So from what I've seen is that honestly, there's a little bit of it's hard, right? It's very to be able to take your first party data and utilize a CDP, a customer data platform, in a manner in which you're able to segment out your data, cluster it, and get real audience insights about your consumers. That's not an easy thing to do. It's time consuming. You need a budget for the infrastructure to do that. You need an analytics team to do that. I think, the best things that brands could possibly do, and this is like pie in the sky, my dream as a marketer to come into a brand and be like, wow, you guys have it all figured out, would be, the beauty of a CDP is that it's a bunch of different data sources that have crosswalks that come together. And then you can use all of that beautiful, rich data to cut and dice it and slice it however you want to gain insights and learnings that can make your marketing better, make your company better. And so I think the best thing a brand could do, right, is, in my opinion, is you have your CDP and you have all your rich customer data in there, all your first party data. And there's tons and tons and tons of partners out there that you can procure data from them. It's all, CCPA or privacy compliant that can be ingested into your CDP. And then you can run those big analyses across, okay, you can purchase some demographic, psychographic data that maps to your CDP. And then you can really understand, like, okay, of my consumers, what do they like? Where are they consuming content? How can I cluster them and get an idea of, like, these are my core consumers. These are the people who are going to come back no matter what. And these are the people who are dabbling that maybe need a little more convincing. And I should really focus on them in my prospecting, my acquisition efforts. But that's hard, right? That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, resources. Um, but I think if a marketer, wanted to get started tomorrow in digging into a little bit more of their first party data, I would say there's really affordable turnkey solutions out there. Like a Distillery comes to mind,
Mhm.
where they'll pixel your site and do some audience work for you, not just your homepage, but any of your content, your thank you page, so you can get a little bit of a differentiation on who's coming to my site and hanging out, who's actually converting, from a more qualitative data level about your audiences. Um,
Interesting. So
so
yeah, because that was my next question is like, okay, so like let's say that I'm a brand, I'm listening to this, I'm picking up what
yeah,
you're putting down. What do I do? So
yeah.
I can get in touch with the distillery. Let's pretend that CDP is like on the roadmap, but not exactly gonna happen tomorrow.
Correct.
Is distillery a short-term thing that I might be able to do?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a short-term thing. I've used them in the past on both on the agency side and the brand side. And it was really helpful just to understand a little bit more of, like, okay, I have this, and every brand should be doing their own targeting work regardless. But when it comes to the actual data, the actual first party data of who's already aware of you and what that customer base looks like, It's really hard to get beyond like where they came from, how long they spent on your site, the site analytics, all that kind of stuff, to get into that more qualitative psychographic demographic data about them so that you can not just figure out who to target, but also make your campaigns more effective. That's where you start to get into all the best practices that performance marketers live by, right? Have consistent messaging, be personal, make sure you're refreshing things, make sure that the pull through is there from exposure to your site experience to life cycle, right? You want the consumer to feel like they're dealing with one cohesive company.
Mhm.
But it's almost like, how can you make it more personal? How can you make that journey really impactful if you don't know what they're looking for, why they're there, or who you're talking to? Um,
Interesting.
so I
So
would say that's my
Distillery
big
is like
thing.
a pixel that you can place on your site, on
Yep.
the homepage or on any of your pages, and it will enrich your analytics data with person I mean, not
Not
privacy
personal, yeah, not
personal,
privacy
but
data, but
with
general.
qualitative, like
Yes.
here's their affinity segments, here are their does it show you other sites that they've visited?
Yes. Yeah. So it'll show you kind of that whole path to conversion or path to visit, where they're frequenting, where they live, what demographic stream do they fall into. And it depends on, special ad category, what you're allowed to look into on the consumer. If you're a bank or something in lending, you're gonna have limited intel versus if you're more CPG or product based,
Mhm.
because they're very sensitive and compliant in that way. But um, I would say it's a great way for brands to get started. And I like to think of that as well, what you said before, like it's constantly a roadmap, right? You can do something in the short term that'll enrich your campaigns, make your marketing efforts, maybe just a little bit more successful. But that long term roadmap of a CDP is like a company undertaking, right? That's a big deal, and
Right.
it'll really benefit marketers. But you kind of have to go on a roadshow and convince people that it's worth it and it's
Yeah,
something
'cause
that the company should invest in.
yeah, because it's like, well, we've got CRM and
Right.
we've got, we've got marketing automation, we've got these other systems. What do we need CDP for?
Right.
And I know that that conversation happens. So interesting. So Distillery, we'll include that in the show notes, and I might check it out also. And
Yes.
it provides uh, data on an individual level, or more so like on an
It's
aggregate level.
It's cohort level. It won't be on like the individual that you won't be able to see the PII in terms of like the IP address they came from or any of that kind of stuff because they have to be obviously CCPA compliant and just in general privacy compliant with what they're showing you. But I think it's actually the last time I used it, it could be both managed service and self-service platform where you could kind of jump in and see the analytics on a day-to-day basis and just kind of understand a little bit more about who's actually coming to your site. And I think it helped us with some big changes at the time. I was working on a travel client of a big hotel,
Mhm.
and we had this aspirational target of these 22 to 25-year-olds who were coming with their friends and spending a lot of money at the bars and restaurants. And that was who we wanted. Right. But when we ran the distillery, we were like, okay, we're really getting 50 to 60-year-old empty nester couples who are coming and having a great time. And that's great, right? That's awesome. That's our core. And we don't want to
Yeah.
ignore them, but we don't necessarily need to go out there and show them our videos or show them our prospecting tactics because they don't need convincing to come here. But that
Right.
other generation, that younger core group of consumers that are like dabbling, looking at us a little bit, what do they care about? And
Right.
what do they care about when they go to a hotel, go with their friends? How can we enrich their experience and then show them that so that they want to come stay
Yeah.
with us?
So
So it was really helpful in that way.
you're like exclude empty nesters, add millennials, change the
Yes.
landing page.
Yes, bachelor parties, like we can keep all the other stuff. But yeah, even in just that way, I think it can make a huge difference for how you are approaching your audiences. And then that should make your performance better, right? So
That's awesome
I think I
news.
would say that's my maybe not secret because I think people will hear this and be like, yeah, duh, that makes sense. But more just like, how do we not talk about that a little more?
I would love to hear one of your biggest performance marketing secrets that's driven or helped drive some of your success.
Yeah, we're all about performance at my company, Biz2Credit, and there are channels that are really profitable, especially in our industry. And most of the brands that I come across, most of the marketers, they don't even know about these channels. They're really not paying attention to the great opportunity that's right on their doorstep. So if you know PPC, if you know SEM, sort of CPM advertising, you got to know about this channel. That's my secret weapon.
So there's secret channels. I love it. I mean, I like secrets in general. Entire secret channels. I mean, tell me, like, can you tell us what it is or what they are?
Oh yeah. Well, this is it's affiliate marketing in the modern day performance marketing age. And there's a lot of history in this space, and a lot of folks go way back to like Web 1.0 in thinking about, outbound linking and clickouts and a lot of ad fraud and things of that sort. But these days, there's a whole new crop of affiliate marketers who are doing things even better than what you see in the programmatic space in a lot of ways, because it's all performance driven. And if you do it right, and if you're in my chair, like you're at a brand and you're trying to double your performance without paying super inflated CPCs, you can work through these affiliate marketing channels, and really you can double your results for not doubling your cost. So to me,
I'm
that's kind of one of the secrets that
I'm
has
so
made us so
interested.
successful.
I'm so interested in this topic, and very fun story. I actually got my start in affiliate marketing without knowing it. I didn't actually know the name of it, but once upon a time, I'd started a website, a niche website, was writing a bunch of content, driving traffic, even buying some ads. But I would promote other people's products with a special link that they would provide. And then anytime somebody from my website went over to there and made a purchase, I would get a little commission. And I was making like a few $1,000s a month at one point, which was for, a young kid back in those days, not bad. So I love the affiliate channel. And I agree that most brands, I don't know if they don't know about it or if they just, because there is like a shady underbelly kind of
Yep.
when you say the word affiliate marketing. In the UK, I think they call it like partnership marketing or something. But why do you think it is that this super profitable 100% performance based channel is not like all the rage?
I think I think that underbelly is a big part of it, but I think the first thing that kind of turns marketers off of it is it's just not talked about that much, right? Everybody's talking about Google and how much ad budget Google's going to get. Everybody's talking about online video. Everybody's talking about social media platforms. And if you're like me in the B2B space and you're trying to sell to small businesses, you might have a little bit here and there of influencer marketing to top it off. That's probably about as close as most folks would normally get to really thinking about affiliate. But what I've experienced at Biz2Credit is that when we really started tapping into it and looking for those partnership avenues, as opposed to just trying to bid competitively on search, especially, what we found is that when setting up the right kind of partnership arrangements with these affiliates, we can drive, double the results. And really, as we set our strategy out on a quarterly basis, a big portion of what we're looking at is what can we do in the affiliate space. It helps build brand reputation. It also drives direct traffic. And if you do it right, you can get these affiliates that are your partners. You can get them to actually bid on a performance basis, just like you would on Google, just like you would on Facebook. So yeah, I mean, I think the story there is probably just it takes a lot more manual labor to do it right. You can't just go to one DSP and have everything there for you in one place. It's sort of in that state where there's no one central platform, and so it's not really touted as the place where all digital marketing dollars should be going.
Yeah. Well, there are platforms, I think. There's this one that I heard of, what was it,
Yep,
impact.com, I want to
impact.
say.
Hmm.
Um, but on the note, so for anybody that's not familiar with affiliate marketing, it's basically this idea that says, hey, anybody that's got a website or that's got an audience can come and grab a special link from our site, promote it to their audiences and get paid every time that a transaction happens from that particular link or that source. But what's so funny is that nobody's doing it. Well, some, but not many. Anytime I see a brand doing it, I'm like, okay, they're pretty savvy. They must be, kind of hip to some of these things. But then B is that it's not all the rage. Like you don't see people clamoring for it. What you do see people clamoring for is influencer marketing, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's like in every publication, it's like the new hot thing. But isn't that basically affiliate marketing, except instead of paying on performance by transactions, you're like paying on by post or by whatever you're paying
Yeah,
by?
yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I mean, you're working with somebody who is, taking your ad dollars. So they're affiliated with you in that respect. They're just not, as you said they're not driving that performance result that you might get from some of your direct response channels. And if you're in the B2B space, these influencers, it it can be a waste of time. Trying to find somebody that actually has a following among small business owners and is going to actually put your message out there in the right way. It's tough. I mean, we have tried it, and what we found is that especially folks that are searching and researching financial products, they're going on Google still. They're still using the classical mechanism of, you know, awareness, sort of consideration, and then decision in the classic framework that we all learned kind of growing up in the industry. And you want to be there at each of those touch points in as many places as possible. You want to have a paid ad, you want to have an organic ad, and if you can get it, if you can be ranked, if you can be listed, you want to be in those listicles as well. So
Yeah.
kind of that 360-degree search-based affiliate marketing is what, I think more people in B2B are probably missing out on. And I can tell you from my own experience, when I started at the company, this wasn't something that we were really doing much of at all, 5, 6 years ago.
Mhm.
It's really kind of taken off in the last 3, 4 years. And even during COVID, I mean, this was a significant area because at least in our industry, small business owners, they were so panicked about what was going on and where could they get reliable information. So these online sites that just provided a reliable resource to say, yeah, this company can provide you with a PPP loan, or this other company is helping you with, SBA finance. Those kinds of websites, they're doing a real service. They're helping the customer kind of sort through their very wide range of options. And you
Yeah, the
want to
aggregators.
be there. You want your brand to be there.
Yep. So I have 100 questions to ask you, and unfortunately, we have a limited amount of time. But real quick, before we transition to something else, I would like to give the audience something actionable on affiliate marketing and affiliate programs. And imagine that it's somebody that's like kind of knows the general sense of what affiliate is, but like has never really considered or tried to put one together. Sounds like you've seen successful and unsuccessful attempts. So what would you say are like, if you were to give us a 3-minute masterclass or 1 minute or however many minutes you want masterclass on basically how to set up a good, proper, high performing, high quality affiliate marketing program, like what are some of the big things you've learned?
Yeah, I think the first thing is audit yourself, because your own search account, and I'm going to just start with search because it's where you should start. Let's put it that way. So audit yourself. Look at your own search accounts. Who are you cross bidding with? What are the websites out there that don't directly offer your product but are still showing up on the keywords that you're bidding for? Those are natural affiliate opportunities for you right there. And
Because
you
they're
should try and
already paying to be there.
they're paying to be there. In fact, they're eating away at your profits little by little the longer that you're not working with them. Because as much as, if your bid right now is $10 and somebody else comes into the space and is bidding 12 and it's pushing you down in the SERP rankings, you're suddenly having to bid 12, 13, 14. That company, if they're not a direct competitor, they're somebody that you want to be working with, because you can get the traffic that they're paying for, And you might, if you do it right and you manage your costs the right way, ultimately you'll actually be able to get sort of more than what you otherwise would get out of your search account.
That's really
Conversion
interesting.
conversion
So
rates can be
that's
higher and so on.
so that's a way to prospect for good affiliates by looking at like the auction insights and the who
Oh
else
yeah,
is already showing up. That's
yeah.
not a
So
direct competitor.
right. So start with that, and then what you've got to do is, at least the way I've always approached it is, you start with your top three, and you try to negotiate in parallel so that you can get a strong sense of what the market is actually going to bear, what are the rates, what's an effective CPC, and make sure you get specific with these guys. You know, in your industry, mobile traffic may be more valuable than desktop traffic. You know, make sure that you're bidding with the affiliate at the right level of granularity. If you need them to do filtering before they send you a paid click, make sure you let them know about it up front.
As you think back on all your win stories to date, like what are some of the, or what's just one of the big secrets that enables you to post such big wins?
Yeah, it kind of comes down to the first thing is knowing who your customer is and what your unique selling proposition is. You need to have that really coalesce before you can point your arrows at the target. If you don't know what you're hunting for, you don't know where what you're hunting for sleeps, eats, what it does, you're gonna have a hard time finding that target, just to use a hunting analogy. But it starts with that. Once you have that really well nailed down, my success in a lot of respects has come from what I would call sort of micro testing, and really iterating rapidly on small changes. It doesn't have to be a huge production. I think learn and fail fast and iterate and grow. That's been really key to getting stuff done. I think a lot of folks let great get in the way of good, or
Yeah.
good get in the way of done. I'd like to say, don't do anything just to do it and get it done well.
Yeah.
But I'd say that if there was one secret, I'd say it's that, but it still has to be founded in what your product is, why it's different than your competition in a way that people, your target audience, cares about. So the USP part, the unique selling proposition, really, really key, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to micro testing, that's an interesting concept. How would you describe micro testing? Is it different than regular testing, or is it just a faster pace of iteration?
Yeah, it's really faster pace. The idea is get to a conclusion quickly. I think if you put too many variables in market, whether it's an ad unit, an audience, a media channel, that you're setting yourself up for what I call something that's precisely inaccurate, right? The more levers of precision you introduce in it, the harder it's going to be to get to a statistically significant conclusion. So focus on one thing, whether it's a type of ad creative, whether it's a channel, whether it's an audience, whether it's a call to action, and whether it's a color of a button, and just focus on that and get it done. I think the idea of rapid testing, drawing conclusions, really, really important to get through. So
I see. So is it this concept of essentially, like, if you think of your ad dollars as capital, right?
sure.
Are you saying essentially that instead of allocating your capital across like 10 different variables or different tests, to really concentrate all or most of the capital behind one singular point of testing, so that you can just really rapidly test that one thing, and depending on what you're spending, you might get stat sig like in a day or two, and then to move on to the next thing?
Yeah, maybe a little bit different than that. I think you certainly can heavy up on a single aspect of it. What I wouldn't do is introduce different components into any single media test. For example, if test A is, here's a new creative and a new audience and I don't know, a new call to action. Test B is, here's a control creative, maybe a slightly different audience, maybe a slightly different call to action. You've got too many things there that are able to color the test. So a test should be clean, it should be pure, and you could have 5 or 6 of these things going on at a single time, but you know, keep things isolated, keep things, draw stat sig conclusions on a test by minimizing the control variables, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to outline there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And are there certain elements for you that you will start testing with? Like, do you generally start with one thing or another, or is it all situational?
It really depends. I feel like, again, you try to start with the best audience that you possibly can. Now, there's a um, limit to how far you can go with building lookalike audiences in different channels, right? Sometimes you just have to pick an audience or pick a cohort that seems to align closely with who your target customer is.
Mhm.
So audience testing is one aspect. Usually the thing that I'll try to go for is creative testing out of the gate.
Mhm.
And then, as you know, sometimes the creative has to differ by channel as well. What works on TikTok isn't necessarily going to work on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
isn't necessarily going to work on YouTube. So you have to think about that thoughtfully as well. But you know, the quicker you can get to a stat sig conclusion, the better your marketing efforts are going to be, because it's all about removing components that are gonna negatively impact your ROAS. You
Yeah.
wanna really get to the answer quickly. So the more observations on a given question, the quicker you are going to get to the answer. So
Yeah.
minimize the questions, you know, statistically speaking, and try to drive to that conclusion as quickly as you can. So that, to me,
So
it's speed to the answer more than number of questions I'm trying to answer.
when you think about all the tests you've run, are there any that jump out at you that you're most proud of, or that you were most excited by?
Let me
Can you
think
tell
about
us a
that.
story?
Yeah, when I was working at TransUnion, so I was actually not on the marketing side as much as I was on the product development side. So we were creating marketing solutions for insurance companies, and
Mhm.
one of the things that we brought to market was something called in-market audiences, and these
Mm.
audiences would align themselves with activities we'd see on the credit file that would be highly correlative or predictive of someone shopping for insurance.
Mhm.
And you know, in the digital ecosystem, from event to actually getting an impression, if you're going through a traditional onboarding solution, that could take maybe 2 weeks, right? And 2 weeks is a lifetime in the digital ecosystem. So working directly with one of the platform providers, I think it was Facebook, we had a direct integration with them using synthetic IDs to marry up in-market consumers to impressions. And so we could do that in about 24 hours. And the first time we tested that for an insurance client, the results were phenomenal, because
Wow.
you know, think about what drives a piece of direct mail. So I've been in the direct mail business too. So there's an event that happens, the next day a piece of mail goes out, and it's about as close as you can sort of get to the event. And this is offline data to an offline medium. But to get that offline intent signal and marry it up to a digital ad impression and see the results and the response rate on that is just super huge. I won't tell you who the client was. It was a top 50 insurance company, but significant win for them.
Yeah.
And frankly, one of the things I wanted to, one of the reasons I want to get back on the advertiser side is because I wanted to use some of the things I'd built and learned in my time at product. So
Awesome.
great win
So
for
the
me, great win for
quality
them.
of those audiences just increased dramatically because you were able to get at them, 24 hours after they
Yeah, yeah.
were searching for insurance or
Right. And it's the intent signal, a different type of intent signal, not someone that raises their hand, say, hey, I'm searching for auto assurance or on browsing on an aggregator site. This is something that they may have done offline. Think about connecting, I don't know, your purchases at Target and, hey, looks like you may like sugar cereal and you get an ad for sugar cereal. The equivalent in auto insurance is, hey, I changed my address, or I opened up a mortgage, or I opened up an auto loan, things like
Yeah.
that. And to be able to build on that and create these marketing audiences is pretty powerful.
Wow. What do you consider to be one of your best kept secrets to success in marketing?
Yeah, when you're in startup land, you got to wear a lot of hats as a marketer, and so being a ninja, right, is required.
Yeah.
The higher up you, like as the size of company, size of team increases, you got to have different secrets. And so that's what I thought was really interesting to chat about, because I'd say secret wise, the thing that no one really taught me was how to inherit a team and infuse sort of the cultural elements that you need to be able to grow, right? And
Yeah.
really understand really quickly, where people stand and how to move fast. Every CEO is like, hey, I'm going to bring in this hot shot. What's the fastest way you can deliver growth? And that's the storyline you got to have is, okay, I can deliver growth and I can be a performance driven, head of marketing, but what am I working with? And
Yeah.
that's the thing that I think has been the biggest secret that really nobody talks about, is how to inherit a team, figure out where they are, and get to growth fast.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of CMOs can relate, pretty much all of them. And especially because many CMOs, like the average tenure is not all that long.
Yeah.
So you've developed a framework, basically like a science almost, to come into a team to quickly assess, like, hey, who are these players that I have? What are their roles? What are their key skill sets? How do you get the most out of them, in the most kind of enjoyable way that vibes with
Yeah.
the culture? Tell us about that framework a little bit. Like how does it work?
Yeah. I like to say that CMO is the current marketing officer.
Right.
It's the tenure is usually pretty short.
Yeah.
The ones that tend to stick around are the ones who can drive revenue. And so there are really two techniques that I use. I call it a hiring and management framework. But I'm going to talk about, I'd say two parts. One is to assess what role an individual could play on a team, so you could understand leadership, but you could also understand, the specific sort of contribution that they would make to a team. And then at the same time, on the other side is, how do you assess people's skills really quick and get them to talk about that,
Yeah.
to get them to say some of the language that you need to understand. So happy to just, dive into both of those real quick if you want me to.
Please. Yeah, absolutely.
So on the role side, whenever I'm managing a team, right? If I'm coming in as a CMO, I've got either VPs or I've got other leaders under me, other managers at a minimum. And so what I try to do is I kind of work through the organization. I come in and I will do a listening tour and meet pretty much everybody I can on the team. At Heartland, we've got about a 60-person team,
Mhm.
and I had to do that work. So it's like a part of my 90-day plan is to come in and say, okay, let's get to forecasting really quick, but let's understand who we have. And so really the first 2 weeks is a listening tour and to really understand the people. And the basis for that is like, you heard Peter Drucker, right? The culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
And I take that pretty seriously. And so role wise, I try to understand which one of four an individual might primarily play. Okay. So what I say is, and I do this in interviews and when assessing a team. So the questions that I ask them, like, hey, there's 4 different roles that anybody plays on the team. And as a leader, I need all 4 of those roles represented. And what I'm going to try and do is figure out if that individual, which seat they would sit or which role they would play on the team. So you're either a producer, an entrepreneur, an integrator, or an administrator. Okay. And so I go through and I explain what a producer is, what each of them are. And I say, which one do you most identify with and why? And so producer, this is somebody who's willing to color outside the lines to get work done. They are milestone driven, achievement driven, and it may not always be perfect, but it tends to get done. Okay.
Yep.
Entrepreneurs, these are ideas people. These are the people that are great to collaborate with, but they tend to not get work done. And that's why they need a producer and an an administrator next to them to get work done and to keep it going. But they're the big ideas people. What's the next big thing? And so you need that entrepreneurial thought and that role on the team. The next one, the integrator. These are the people that are great at connecting systems, or they're great at connecting people. I typically recognize an integrator when they have been in a meeting and they're like, why is, Sue not in here? She needs to be in here because she plays this role. And they recognize what's missing.
Yeah.
And that's why you need the integrator. And then the administrator, it's like, I think of a rail system with a train. You got the rail system, you got all the box cars, you've got the schedule and you've got the checklist, and the administrator knows how to create all of those things and checking boxes along the way to assure that work's done. But a lot of administrators, the work may or may not be done, but they have checked the box. So the quality of work isn't what I look for out of administrators. So I asked those people, which role do you sort of most identify with and why? And I typically want to have a producer, an integrator, an administrator around me, because I tend to play the role of an entrepreneur on the team.
Yep. Likewise for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really interesting. I love that classification. A couple questions come to mind, but I'm
Sure.
curious, like, so everybody on the team has to identify primarily with one of those things, right?
Yeah, most
And-
people, when asked that question, they say, I identify with all of them, but this one more.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
And there's not necessarily any correlation between those buckets and the positions that tend to exist, or is there? For instance,
You got
like,
it.
so like, you could have an SEO person, say, that does organic search, and they could be either an entrepreneur or an administrator in that role, or like you
got
need a
it.
certain archetype in that role.
You got it. I look at those roles as the substructure,
Okay.
that's what kind of sits that's the people dynamic
Yeah.
that, when you're building a team, because the skills is the other side, which is what you're talking about. That's a whole different set of questions. So like, let's just take a demand gen manager, for example, right? I'd say the three things that, they need to know how to do is campaign design. They need to know how to do copy that converts, and then they really need to do performance analytics. So when I'm talking to somebody that's either in that role, or I'm listening for somebody who might be able to play that functional role, I say, okay, great. I'm going to put 3 buckets in front of you. I'm going to put a label on each of those buckets, and you have 10 points. And so I'll say, okay, great. Campaign design, copy that converts, and performance analytics. Where do you put your points? And I've given them a even number of points and an odd number of buckets. And what has to happen, the number one, they got to do head math on the fly, which everybody sort of struggles with. Some people don't, but most marketers, when asked that question, are like, I was told there would be no math. But I ask them to do that, and they put their points across those buckets, and it's like, okay, I'm a 3, a 4 and a 3. And it's like, okay, great. Tell me why you're a 4 on this one. And when you get to break down, it really breaks up the conversation into a specific contribution or a skill that you can learn more about really, really quickly. And if you've got 10 demand gen managers, you're going to be able to see across those 3 buckets where you're strong and where you're weak.
Yeah. And you know what I like about this framework is that there's not that many options. Like, there's not 14 archetypes. There's 4.
Correct.
Right? There's not 9 buckets and 50 chips. There's 3 buckets and 10 chips.
You got it.
And you actually do the bucket thing, like literally, like, come into my
100%.
office. Here's buckets.
Oh, well, I mean, they're figurative. Come on now. But it would be awesome. I would be great to have actual buckets in there for each role. But I mean, if you're interviewing 60 people, you got 5 different teams, right? And then there's all the other teams underneath. It's really hard to do that. So it's a part of the conversation. It's like, I try to get to know who they are first, understand what maybe their values are really quick, and then go into like role and skills. And it's a way that's really helped me go through that listening tour and come out with something that's relatively quantitative for things that are actually qualitative, right? And it really does help me see where teams actually sit in their competency and their ability to answer the question. And some people are super prepared and can answer those questions really fast. And the ones who've been able to do that are the ones that I typically can go, okay, I can put some weight on that person to kind of get started with the new playbook.
Got it. Okay, cool. So let's bring this home then. So you've done your listening tour. You've met with each individual team member. you've classified, I don't know what you call those, whether like archetypes or personas, but you've classified
Yeah, I
sort of
just
their zone of genius, call it.
you got it.
Um, and you've identified their self-assessment across the top 3 skills required in that individual seat. So
Yeah.
you've got this all laid out, you know, you've got it on a master spreadsheet. You've probably, you know, you're rearranging maybe some chess pieces in your head, but, or I don't know, what happens after that? Like once you have all those answers, then what?
We're totally in spreadsheet land. Yeah. What I'll do is put it in a spreadsheet. And then I'll also, part of the listening tour is from their manager or whatever, what work they have them doing and what current projects that they have and what are the performance of them, and just do a red, yellow, green on that. So I get the self-assessment and then get the manager's assessment. And when you're inheriting a team, it's like, that's really all you have to go on. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can look at analytics and say, hey, why are we so red here? What's going on? You know, our top of funnel is super weak, you know, and they'll have a reason as to why. But when you've done that bottoms up listening tour and heard the manager's assessment and the individual, you know, contributors assessment, I have that in a spreadsheet, and then I just kind of score where we're weak. So I'll take the organization that I'm imagining that we need to be at and where we are, and I'm looking in the spreadsheet to say, hey, I sort of heat map where we're going to need resources or where we're strong or where we're weak.
Mm.
And that's what I do to sort of build out the plan, to say, okay, let's kick off with a project that gets us all working together. So we have an assessment, but let's start working together on something that's relatively new or something that everybody's familiar with, and see how we are working together. And once we do one of those, you really do, in about 6 weeks, you can really understand, all right, our team is going to be really good here. And when you kind of are 2 months in, right, you need some results. So you're going to say to the CEO, say, hey, I just want to let you know, resource wise, here's some moves that we're going to need to make. And when I go to the CEO and have my spreadsheet, right, of it's a talent assessment ultimately tied to not only my 90-day plan, but also sort of like, here's my forecast for the year based on what we have.
Yeah.
They're typically like, okay, you definitely have your shit together, and I'm willing to give you resources. And that's when you show up as a performance driven head of marketing. You're here to sign up for a number with sales, and you know how to assess a team. And I would say that marketing is kind of like the white whale, if you will, for a lot of CEOs. They don't understand it, and it's hard to find, you know, a great marketing team. And I have had really good success with leaders, and it's bought me quite a bit of credibility to come in and say, I'm not just in sort of performance by, you know, marketing, and I'm going to plow my way through and just bulldoze everybody and bring in all my own people. I'm using what you gave me, and here's what I can do with it.
Like, what's one of your best kept secrets in the way of marketing?
You know, I love that question, Chris. So, I share it a ton. So I think it's only a secret for those that don't like hang out with me or really know me. But I feel very lucky to have spent 20 plus years in sales. And, you know, I often describe sales and marketing like two sides of the same coin. They're very different things, but they're very interconnected things. And I think what is a little bit of my superpower as I try to lean in more into this CMO opportunity is the fact that I understand and speak sales so intimately that I get a lot of credibility from our sales partners and our sales team, because they kind of see me as one of them a little bit. They listen a little more.
Yeah.
But also when I approach, you know, marketing angles, you know, I look a lot at the revenue side. I look a lot at the performance side. I look a lot at the emotional side in the game, and like what we're trying to play here and how it's going to drive sales. And so I think that interconnectedness kind of helps me with a unique perspective in our industry.
100%. Yeah. It's like, it's almost the way that a CEO has a view, like a view of the entire business, you know? So if you're the CEO of a business, like your perspective is going to be a lot different than that of any salesperson or any marketer.
Yeah. 100%.
And I oftentimes, when we're working with clients and we're writing copy, you know, for landing pages or web pages, I love to get the sales team involved, because they know the customer. Like the marketing team, like, sure, we've got personas and we'll do market research and such.
Yeah.
But the sales team often writes the best copy in my experience.
Yeah, you got to put a little compliance in there sometimes just to make sure the sales team isn't going this way. But yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you arrive in that seat? Like, how did it, Yeah, I'm just curious, like, because it
So
sounds like you were killing it in sales, and then did you just one day wake up and be like, "Hey, I want to try the marketing"?
no, it's wild. So, kind of like I mentioned before, I really do believe sales and marketing are interconnected. And I spent a lot of time leading sales and then of course trying to come up with new and creative ways to market. And so the story, long story short, was I was really good at what I would call traditional origination strategies in lending because that's how I came up. That's what I did. And I that's when I was a sales guy directly, like that's what I did to win. And so I feel like I kind of had the book written on that. I kind of knew it.
And what do you
But and
mean
then
by
you look,
that traditional origination
yeah. So like
strategies?
the business that I came up in mortgage was belly to belly, referral based, 100% commission salespeople in market. So these weren't buying leads, these weren't digital advertisers. This is just like hitting the streets, building relationships, driving referral based business.
Yeah, gotcha.
So it's like that playbook I have nailed down. And
Mhm.
then you fast forward, and I'm running the Western United States, and we have a huge team, and this internet thing has become gigantic, and social media has become prolific, and none of the strategies that I didn't have to leverage any of these in the glory days, but now it's real and it's around us. And so I joke that I'm the CMO now because I put videos out on the internet, but 6 years ago I decided to become a practitioner in this space too. And I was
Yeah,
doing it differently. I was doing it for recruiting. I was doing it for brand building. But if I could do it, I felt I could lead salespeople in a better and more effective way. So I
yeah.
got really passionate about digital and marketing and social media. And I invested a lot of my, like you mentioned, my content strategy. I'm like, well, if I'm not going to talk the talk, I'm going to walk the walk and I'll figure it out along the way. And then literally, I mean, I get called into a meeting with our president and our CEO, and they tap me on the shoulder and they're like, we want you to be our CMO and kind of, come in and do all this stuff that you've been preaching.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it because I put videos on the internet? Is this the reason? So it's a pretty wild path into this role, but it also speaks to kind of our entrepreneurial culture here and this company that they would be willing to take a sales guy who has this kind of passion and open that opportunity up. But it's pretty wild ride.
It makes so much sense though, like, given that the salespeople are so close to the customer and given that,
100%.
the best marketers generally tend to be the ones that know the most about the customer. I'm surprised that I don't know more CMOs that came from a sales background. And I'm sure that there's some that were sales really early in their career, but generally CMOs tend to come up the path of the marketing side. I think
Yeah.
just kind of pondering here, I mean, it would make more sense to have your converters from sales to marketing. But I've got a two-sided question for you.
Yeah.
Like, in your role now as marketing, how has your background in sales really been helpful? Like, if you could
Mhm.
think of any specific examples where you're like, whoa, the way I'm thinking about this with my sales background is just like powerful. And then are there any ways that you feel like it might have held you back or like it might, be a disadvantage in a way, just like maybe there's a very sharp learning curve in some areas of
Yeah.
marketing?
That's that's the first place I was going to go is just, yeah, the learning curve is sharp. And but I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the challenge and the stretching and the growing. Like I find myself thriving in positions of change. I enjoy that. So it's hard, but it's very enjoyable.
Mhm.
And that's definitely a learning curve issue. That would be one of the largest challenges.
Is
On the
there
advantage, say again?
Sorry to interrupt you, but, anything specific learning curve wise that was just like a real pain to learn or to like
Well,
have you
I
gotten
think
Google slapped, for instance?
yeah, no, I haven't gotten any. I'm lucky enough that when I don't know anything, I don't tend to put my foot in my mouth very quickly. I tend to hire people or find other people who know what they're doing and start listening
Yeah,
fast. So there's a bit of humility that kind of helps me through that. I'm not someone who jumps from the rooftop being like, I know everything, calm down. No,
yeah.
I think that's a failure of leaders too. They have to know everything. That's not how it works. Um, but on the flip side, kind of where the strengths opportunity like lies is I feel like to your point, I have a really deep understanding of my customer. I've sold to them. I've been sitting across from them. I know what their fears are and what their issues are. And then when you talk about support from our organization to our sales team, I know what they need. And I'm a good listener and I have great connections and relationships there where if for some reason I'm messing up, they're going to tell me very honestly where they feel like I could get better. So our feedback loop's really tight. And I think that gives me an advantage in leaning into the new space, is bringing that perspective in and letting it help guide the decisions a little bit better.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. Cool. So let's talk about some of your big wins. I love hearing win stories. And I think I'm just looking at your LinkedIn. So so you're relatively new to that CMO role. You've been there for about a year, it looks like, for LinkedIn.
Yeah, but we've
anyway.
had some significantly cool wins. One of them was when I stepped into the role. We hadn't really been very strategic with our social strategy.
Mhm.
And so, we've been active and in the water, but not very strategic. And so one of the things that I'm very passionate about is my kind of consumer first mentality. And I think a lot of organizations stumble on this on their social strategy, where they end up talking a lot about themselves versus things that the customer is really dealing with and cares about.
Yeah.
And again, it's a personal viewpoint. So someone could be like, I don't agree, Alec. And I'd be like, that's great. But I feel like the more you talk about yourself and your rewards and your company's accolades, the less a customer is really into, like, they don't care.
Yeah, nobody
They're-
cares.
They're worried about what
Everybody-
they're worried about.
Yeah.
It seems like you and I vibe on that. So we started talking directly to our customers on our social strategy. We started putting out content around problems they're facing and solutions and education and inspiration. And we got a dramatic, 4,000% increase in reach and exposure in just a very short period of time,
Wow.
because people started to realize, no, that's what I care about. That's what I'm interested in. Let me engage. And then the secondary benefit, which was really cool, was then we inspired our sales force to find their language in the space. And so it was kind of a double benefit, where we got the reach and exposure we were looking for, but then the sales force was able to emulate and just say, hey, well, I can do that too. And I can build my personal brand off that. And that's good content. That's a good direction. All I gotta do is turn the camera on. And it was like, absolutely. So we were able to kind of help them drive their business and increase the company's reach, in pretty substantial ways,
That's
just
awesome.
with a small pivot and a little perspective.
Brilliant. And you're talking organic social, or is that
Yeah.
paid social, or both?
Yeah, organic.
That's awesome. What's your big channel organically? Is it like mostly Facebook or Insta?
So
I guess those are
we're playing everywhere, because I'm a big believer of learning. And I'll give you a funny example on that, Chris. Like, we've had content that did modestly okay on Instagram and absolutely 100x'd on YouTube Shorts. And so it's like same piece of content, and that platform just ran it and ran with it, and Instagram was kind of like, meh. And so, we're just, I think that trying to predict the algorithms in these platforms is silly. I think you can just be a student of what's happening and be learning and be adapting on the fly.
yeah.
And that's been one of our biggest pickups, is kind of just watching it. We have LinkedIn is massively powerful for us. There's just such a great current algorithm help there. That's fantastic. And, we get to build brand and we get to drive leads, and it's a double-edged win for us. So
LinkedIn, huh?
LinkedIn. Yeah. Such a slept on platform. Wildly slept
Interesting.
on.
Wow. LinkedIn for B2C. You never hear anybody talking about that.
So-
Because
so
you guys are
not-
totally B2C, right?
Dude, oh, absolutely. But I mean, look, we have employee benefit packages. We have some B2B stuff that we like. We love to give discounts for employers and packages that way. But the reason that I get all fired up on LinkedIn is these are human beings that have jobs, and most human beings that have jobs and resources, they tend to want to own a home, or they own a home. And so I'm kind of like, check. Like, they're checking all my boxes of who do I want to target? And people are on LinkedIn scrolling and doing what they do, and they're networking and selling. And so they bump into our content and they're like, I didn't think of that. And, as long as we're thoughtful and strategic in what we post and how we post, and we don't become this annoying brand that's just kind of bugging them every day,
Yeah.
it's a huge opportunity.
That's awesome. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us here today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at revenuedrivencmo.com. That's revenuedrivencmo.com. And hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours. even if you're already a client. If you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. And that's just because you're a listener of this podcast. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenuedrivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenuedrivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.